Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom from the holy city of Yerushalayim. Today, the 20th of Elul of the year 5777, corresponding to the 11th of September of the year 2017, a noteworthy date for many, 11th of September, with many memories, a true watershed, and right now also with the southeast of the United States being buffeted by storms. We pray for the welfare of all of our brothers and sisters, wherever you are. God may be with you and protect you. And with that, my dear friends, I'll continue with our studies today of Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. Shalom. Today, the 20th day of the month of Elul of the year 5777, corresponding to the 11th of September of the year 2017. We continue today with our studies in Shir HaShirim with the parasha, the very beautiful and evocative parasha that begins at chapter 3, verse 1 of Shir HaShirim. And to my great delight, I have before you, those watching on the screen, the actual klaf text, the parchment handwritten text of Shir HaShirim. And for those who wish to see the nekudot, the vowels, which are of course not written in the parchment, then please go to a printed Bible where you will have the nekudot. Says the beloved, remembering her times of separation after the flourishing, the blossoming love between herself and her lover. Al mishkovi balelois bikashti eis she'ohavo nafshi bikashtiv v'lo matzosiv al mishkovi balelois, upon my couch, my bed in the nights. Bikashti, I sought out es she'ohavo nafshi, I sought out that my soul loves, my beloved. Bikashtiv, I sought him out, the repeated word for emphasis, expressing her restlessness. Bikashtiv v'lo matzosiv, but I did not find him. Then the very dramatic verse 2, Akumano v'asoivevo bohir bashvokim urvochoivois avaksho et sho'avo nafshi bikashtiv v'lo matzosiv. Akumano, let me get up then. Vasoivevo, let me go around in the city, b'shevakim u'v'rechoivos, in the markets and the streets. Avaksho eis she'ahavo nafshi, I search out the one that my soul loves. Bikashtiv v'lo matzosiv, I sought him but I could not find him. Metzoine hashoimrim hasovevim bo'ir, eis she'ohavo nafshi le'isem. Metzoine HaShomrim, the guards, HaSovevim Bo'ir, those that are circuiting the city at the night time, the dead of night, they found me. Es she'over nafshi le'isem, I asked them, did you see the one that my soul loves? Ki ma'at she'ovarti mehem, at she'motzosi es she'ohavo nafshi. It was almost that I went past them. Just after I passed them, Ad shemotzosi, until I found es she'ohavo nafshi, the one my soul loves, the repeated phrase, the one that my soul loves. Achastiv velo arpenu. Achastiv, I took hold of him. Velo arpenu, I will not let him go, I will not rest, relax my grip to let him be released. Ad shehevisiv el beis imi, until I shall bring him to the house of my mother. Ve'el cheder horosi, and to the chamber of the one that gave birth to me, my parent. She's truly here seeking to have the bring him into her own home as a sign of absolute intimacy and the love between them. She wants to bring him to the very home of her mother here in this small town or village amidst the rolling hills of pasture of the flocks. Here she wants to take her beloved into her mother's house just as soon as she found him. And again the oath which she makes to the daughters of Jerusalem, Hishbati eschem benos Yerushalayim. I have put you under an oath, daughters of Jerusalem, b'tzvos or ba'aylos hasodeh, by the tzvaot, by the gazelles, or ba'aylos hasodeh, or this time it is the aylos themselves, the deer of the field. Im to'iru ve'im to'iru eso avo, if you will arouse, if you will stir up the love, until it will desire. The second time that we have this oath that she makes the daughters of Jerusalem, the daughters of the city, swear to her not to do anything that might spoil the love between herself and her absent lover, until he will choose to come back to her. The second of three oaths that we find in Shir HaShirim that we'll comment upon in greater depth when we come to review our studies with Targum Yonatan and with the commentary of Rashi and other sources. So this is her attempt to find her lover again, and in her musing she is talking and declaring about the great and wonderful days when she came forth from the wilderness on her marriage canopy. So in the explanation of Masudat David that we shall come to presently, it is the beloved herself that is saying about herself, declaring, as it were, speaking about herself as a queen being brought to her beloved, who she sees as her king. Mizois, Oilo, mi hamidbo, kesimlois oshon, mukuteres mor, olevaino, mikol avkas rochel. Mi zois, who is this? We see the interplay between these two pronouns. In Shir HaShirim we had ze omed achar koslenu, this is standing behind our wall, and here mi zois, who is this, the female third person pronoun referring to the beloved, to the Shekhinah, evoking the Shekhinah, kacha, mi zois oilo min hamidbor, she's coming up from the midbar, the wilderness, kesimrois oshon, like pillars of smoke visible from afar in glory, mekuteres mor ulevoino, she is perfumed with the incense of myrrh and frankincense. Mikol avkas rochel, from all of the powders of the rochel, the perfumer, with a perfumier. We find throughout Shir HaShirim many references to fragrances of the different precious aromatic herbs and plants, and here is one of them, a constant expression of this spiritual chain, charm, which attaches to those from whom these fragrances come forth. And continuing with her depiction of herself as the queen on her bridal litter, Hinei mitoso shel Shlomo, shishim giborim soviv lo migiborei Yisrael, kulom achuzei cherev, melumedei milchomo ish charbo al yirecho mipachad balelois. Hinei mitoso shel Shlomo. Here the bed of Shlomo. She is speaking of her own marital bed, and she is, as it were, personified as the bed in this metaphor. And she is, for Shlomo, her lover, whom she depicts as the great King Shlomo in this pastoral surroundings. And here she's under great protection. The mitah, the bed of Shlomo, shishim giborim sovivlo. There's 60 mighty warriors around her, migiborei Yisrael, from the mighty warriors of Israel. Kulam achuzei cherev, all of them are gripping the sword. Melumedei milchomo, they are all learned in the arts of war. Ish charbo al irecho mipachad balelois. Each one with his cherev, his sword, upon his thigh to defend against the fear of the night. Well, this particular verse is considered to have very great power, and is one of the verses that was recited before retiring to sleep at night because of its great power of protection, where it speaks about God's protection of the Shekhinah as she rests in the people of Israel and in the temples. We shall see in the commentary of Metzudat David. To continue now with the next short parasha, which continues with this evocation of the love chamber for the lover and his beloved. Apirion osolo hamelech Shlomo me'atzei halevonon. Apirion is a marriage bridal canopy and litter that the king Shlomo has made for himself for his marriage. As we see here, the marriage is explicitly stated in this parasha, and it was made me'atzei halevonon. It was made from the trees of Lebanon, the tall cedars of Lebanon. Amudov also chesef, the pillars he made of silver. Pidoso zohov, it was the ripud, the coating of the floor and the inner surfaces of gold. Merkovo argomon, the actual merkav, which is the place of riding, the place where the saddle of a horse, but the place where the rider sits upon his rechev, his chariot. The merkav is argaman, made of it's dyed with the color of purple. This word here, argaman, alludes to the names of all of the principal angels, Ariel, Raphael, Gavriel, Michael, and Nuriel, in the initial letters of their names, making up the term argaman, which is the inner chamber. Which is surrounding the inner chamber, tocho, but the inside, the very inside of this chamber of love, is ratzuf ahavo. It is ratzuf. It is the floored, based upon the love mibenos Yerushalayim, from the daughters of Jerusalem. All are gathered to contribute to make this beautiful, beautiful chamber. And here in this explanation of glory, she says, go out, Tze'eno ure'eno benos Tzion, Go out and see, you daughters of Zion. This is a new element introduced into our text here. Until now, she's been addressing the Benos Yerushalayim, but here she addresses the Benos Zion, the daughters of Zion, and she tells them, go out to see Bamelech Shlomo, at the King Solomon. This is her beloved, who she sees as this great Oriental king here in this pastoral setting, in this small town wedding, where everything is so beautiful. Shlomo, go to see Shlomo, the king of peace, ba'atoro she'itro lo imoi b'yom chasunosoi, with the crown that his mother has crowned him with on the day of his wedding. Over yom simchas liboy, and on the day of the joy of his heart. But indeed we know that the actual Shlomo HaMelech that we are familiar with from our Tanakh indeed had a mother who was greatly protective of him, as we see in the last one chapter of Mishlei Proverbs, where he speaks about the reproof that his own mother gave to King Solomon, and she was very protective. This was none other than Bat-Sheva, the woman that David HaMelech took for his wife, who was the mother of the one that built the temple. And indeed, the day of the inauguration of the temple, where according to tradition, the Shir HaShirim was actually brought down into the world, that day was the marriage between the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Shekhinah. So with that, let us go to our study of the commentary of Metzudat David on these three short parshiyot that we have looked at, starting from chapter 3, verse 1. Al mishkovi ba'leilos bekashti esho avon nafshi. On my bed in the nights I sought out the one that my soul loved. Says the Metzudat David. She is still talking about what happened, what took place in those days, and she says that now when the night came, I went to the place of the bedecking of my bed for the night, and there I sought out my lover, that my soul loves him. I thought that he'd already come just when I asked for him, and that he would be sleeping there with me at my side, lying at my side on my couch. But I sought him out and I could not find him, because he did not come back. Her lover, the absent Chatan, who has been grazing among the lilies, but he's not come to her. And says Metzudat David Hanimshal, the meaning is to say that I believed at the time after the sin of the golden calf that the prayer of Moses would conciliate God completely with Israel, and all would be restored to what it was before the sin of the golden calf. But she says it was not so, because as we find in Exodus chapter 33, God says to Moses, I will not go up in your midst. In other words, the situation was not restored. So then verse 2, going back to the mashal, she says, let me get up and go around the city. Explains the Metzudat David. Then I said to myself, now I shall go up and go to the city, around all about in the markets and the streets, to seek out the one that my soul loves. And so did I do, because I sought him out. But there too I could not find him. And the nimshal here, he says, is that she says, in all of the days that I went around in the wanderings in the wilderness, Israel for 40 years in the wilderness after the sin of the spies, I was constantly going around in search of my lover, but he was not conciliated with me, and he was not willing to bring me into the land as yet. We shall see later, in later phases of our study, other interpretations of who these gods are. But going for the moment with the pshat, the explanation of the simple meaning by the Metzudat David, he goes on to verse 3. Matzuni Hashomrim, the gods found me. He says, at the time when I was going around in the city to search after him, the guards of the city found me going around in the city while they were guarding the city at night. And I was not ashamed. I asked them explicitly, have you seen the one that my soul loves? Because her great love led her to outstep the bounds of Oriental female modesty by being so forthright about her longing for her lover. And she threw aside her shame and asked them explicitly, and it's as if she's saying, well, I asked them, but I still could not find any answer. And the nimshal, the meaning is that the gods of the city are none other than Moshe and Aaron, the high priest, the leaders of Israel in the wanderings in the wilderness. And Israel would come to them and ask them, well, is there hope? Has God been restored, conciliated with us? And I asked them, have you found prophecy from the mouth of Hashem? According to tradition, during the 40 years until the very end, there was no prophecy in the mouth of Moses for all the time from the sin of the spies until they stood on the threshold of the entry to the land. And this is alluded to in this verse. And she says, well, they did not find any prophecy because I was under a ban before the Almighty in those days. Verse 4, Kimat Shovati Mehem, I just barely went past them, says the Metzudat David explaining these verses, but I sought, continued searching, and in a little while I went beyond those guards. Until then did I find the one that my soul loves. And when I found him, I took hold of him in my hand. I would not let him go. I would not weaken my grip, that he would leave me, that I should be left without him again, until I brought him to the very house of my mother to dwell there with me, in her thinking that her mother will help her to sustain the love continuously. And the girl depends upon her mother for help in building her house. The Nimshal, says Metzudat David, is to say that immediately after those leaders, that is to say Moses and Aaron, separated from Israel because they died in the 40th year of the wandering, that was when Joshua arose and brought me across the river Jordan to come to inherit the land. And God then fought against the Canaanite nations, and I came to the land of Israel, which was my inheritance from my forefathers. That is the holy land that has been prepared for the sake of serving the name of God there in the land of Israel. So after evoking then the period of separation and then the period of restoration, when she actually comes into the house of her mother, the chamber of her parent, this is her ancestral portion, her ancestral land. Once again, verse 5, she makes the daughters of Jerusalem take this oath, the same oath, almost identical verbally to the previous time when she made them take that that same oath. So the Metzudat David continues in his explanation. After she has related the beginning of this love, where her lover tempted her with all kinds of temptations to go after him, and having recounted all that took place, the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, the building of the sanctuary. So now she goes back to the beginning of what she had been saying, and she says, well, since that was how it was at the beginning, the first flourishing of the love, I am confident that he will quickly return and the love will be restored to its original place. And for that reason, I'm making you, the daughters of the town, make you take this oath that you accept the sanction. You will be hefker, you will be cast out and abandoned, just like the gazelles and the deer, if you will cause me to be demeaned in his eyes by stirring his love away to yourselves, all the while that he's not yet returned to me of his own accord. Just as had been said earlier, so she's confident that he will return, and Metzudat David says that the nimshal here is that exactly as it was earlier, that she does not want the revisionist and the replacement theologies to be given strength by the nations of the world until God will himself, will of his own accord, when the time is right, bring about the redemption. And once again we shall see that this verse is quoted in the Talmud as one of the 3 oaths that God made Israel take about not to try to force the end before its appointed time. So Metzudat David, as we now begin the new parasha, beginning at chapter 3, verse 6, who is this coming up from the wilderness like the pillars of smoke, says the Metzudat David, in this very evocative picture of the bride being brought to the marital canopy for the actual chatunah, the wedding. So she is evoking this. He says, verse 6, Metzudat David, she's still relating and praising her own great hatzlacha, her great success that she had from that time of Israel's being chosen. And so she says to the maidens of the town, did you know who is this that is coming up from the wilderness? And through the abundance of her radiant light, she appeared visible from afar, just like columns of smoke that are visible from afar, and her fragrance is good and spreading as if she was decorated with the perfume and the incense of myrrh and frankincense, and of all the most beloved fragrant odors which are to be found by the perfumier, which cause sweet fragrance to an excellent fragrance to spread. And she is saying, says Mr. David, well, that's me. It was that not me that was coming up, and none other, really praising her glorious rise from the wilderness to glory in the land of Israel. And the nimshal is that it was me that came up from the wilderness with columns of pillars of fire and of of cloud which went before me, which appeared like the columns of smoke. And with me was the Mishkan, the sanctuary, and the Mizbeach, the temple altar, on which they would burn the incense with many kinds of perfumes. Going on then to verse 7, it says, Metzudat David, here is the bed of Solomon. Metzudat David says, on account of her great love for her lover, who was very great in her eyes. This village girl, according to the Mashal, this town girl with her beloved lad, the Ro'er, the shepherd, so great in her eyes that she called him by the name of King Shlomo, who was so great and so successful more than all other mortals. And this is what she says to the Ne'arot, to the maidens. Behold, I was so beloved and so precious in the eyes of my lover that from his fear lest the robbers of the night would kidnap me from the very bed that he had prepared for me, he made a powerful guard and surrounded the bed with 60 mighty warriors of the warriors of Israel, who are reliable to guard without letting any sleep cross their eyes. And the Nimshal, says Metzudat David, is that she is saying here is the Bet Amigdash, the holy temple, which had 60 groups of mighty warriors. And these 60 are made up of the 24 guards of the priests, the 24 Mishmarot Kahuna, that came in rotation to the temple. Then there were also, corresponding to them, another 24 duty watches of the Levites. So that together is 48. And then each of the 12 tribes had contingents in Jerusalem at the temple, the Anshe Ma'amad, the men who were present at the time of the sacrifices. So 24 plus 24 plus 12, that is 60. These are the Giborim, the mighty warriors who stood around at the time of the temple sacrifices, and who were responsible for the temple. So this is the nimshal of this picture of the sanctuary of love between the lover and the beloved, which is under heavy security guard, completely secured. And all of those around the temple were righteous and energetic and eager, and the might which they showed was the might of conquering the evil inclination. And thus, on verse 8, they're all gripping the sword. She says all of these mighty warriors who are on guard, they were holding the sword in their hand to be ready to fight against the robbers of the night. And they were well accustomed to war, to understand the tactics of war and the necessary subterfuges which must be made during time of war, each with his sword on his thigh. Each one of them had his sword right there, tight by his side on his thigh, to be ready to take it in his hand should the sword that he had, he's got another hand, two swords there, one in his hand and one on his thigh. If the one in his hand should fall, he's got the other one at his thigh. And the reason for this eager and energetic guard activity was on account of the natural fear that is in the nighttime of kidnappers and thieves. And the nimshal, he says, is to say that all of these kitot, all of these guards around the temple, were well accustomed to the war against the evil inclination. That is the war alluded to here. The yerech is, the thigh is right by the place of man's greatest temptation, and they had the sword of the Brit, the covenant there, to guard them against the temptations of the Yetzer Ra. And they stood there on their guard duty, making vows to be on guard against the seductive temptations of the evil inclination, and they were well aware of the ploys of the evil inclination and his craftiness, and therefore they were afraid of his ability to lest they would be trapped in his the snare of his seductions, and then would be destined to come to the very darkness of night. So now verse 9 of chapter 3, the apirion, the canopy, or the bridal litter, says Metzudat David. She now goes back to tell about the praises and the beauty of the apirion, the bridal litter that he made in order to go into seclusion and to hide away with her. So it's the lover that makes this apirion to have joy with his bride, and thus she says, here see or envisage this apirion that he made of the timbers of Lebanon, from the very choicest of the species. And the nimshal here is of the building of the temple, which was a most wonderful and beautiful building. And she goes on to describe it in verse 10, Amud of Osachesev, he made its pillars of silver. The Amudim, says the Metzudat David, according to the Mashal, these are the 4 columns at the 4 corners of the apirion, of the marital litter or bed on which is being carried, and it is upon the crowns of these pillars above them that they would hang the vilon, a curtain, a partition around the apirion, and the nimshal refers to the 2 pillars known as Yachin and Boaz that flanked the great tall entrance to the ulam that stood before the Mikdash, the holy temple in Jerusalem. These 2 great tall columns known as Yachin and Boaz, which were as beloved as silver. And she says, Refidoso Zohov, the coating of the apirion, the repidato, the spreads upon the bridal litter were made of threads of gold, which were the work of the embroiderer. And the nimshal, the meaning is that the place of the indwelling of the holy divine presence, which was between the 2 keruvim, the 2 cherubs, over the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. The merkavo, the merkav, as I mentioned, is the saddle on which the rider sits, and says Metzudat David, here the merkav refers to the vilon, the fabric, the spread that is hung and riding upon the 4 heads of the 4 pillars around the bed. And the nimshal refers to the parochet, the partition that was at the entrance to the Holy of Holies, which divided between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. And we've mentioned that the significance of the name Argaman, referring to the 5 principal angels, not here mentioned by by Metzudat David, but well known in the Kabbalah. But continuing with Metzudat David here, speaking about this sanctuary, Toichoi Rotzuf Avor, its interior was coated with love. Inside the Apirion, there lies the glowing coal of love. The love that between the lover and she that is beloved more than all of the other maidens. And she is alluding through this love to her lover, that the fire of love for him is actually kindled in the hearts of all of the maidens. And likewise, we saw at the very beginning in chapter 1, verse 3, Al Kain Alomos Ahivucho, therefore the Alamot, the maidens, love you. And the Nimshal here, he says, is to say that within the Mikdash, the temple, was the indwelling of the Shekhinah, so beloved and so pleasant in the eyes of all of the nations. Ava mibnois Yerushalayim, all of the nations having this love that was brought down through the grace of the Holy Temple. And she exclaims in verse 11, go out, daughters of Zion, go out and see now. She takes pride before the ni'arot, before the maidens of the village, of the town, as if she's saying, do not think that my lover loved me purely because of some passing fancy. And true that I'm not worthy of him, because if you will go out of your houses, and if you will go to see the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day on which he was married to me, that was the day of the joy of his heart, because he greatly rejoiced that I had fallen into his goral, into his lot and his destiny. As if she is saying, from here, from that day of the wedding, take a proof that I am indeed worthy for him. For if not for that, his mother would not have crowned him with the crown on the day of the joy of his wedding. As if she is saying that it was his mother, the Abino Ima understanding, who crowns Zer Anpin with the crown of Malchut. In the words of Metzudat David, of the Nimshal here, that is to say that you, the nations, do not think that his choice of me was simply on account of the love he had for the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Even though I am not truly worthy of him on account of myself. But if you will look and see the day of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, when I was a crown for him and a precious treasure, like it says in Exodus, you shall be for me a treasured nation, you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And it's said of Israel in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 3, Israel in whom God takes pride. And all this is going back to what she was saying earlier. It's because of this, therefore, that do not to quickly try to stir up the love in just the way that I have explained to you, let it come of its own accord. Before we leave this, let us just note that Rashi here does address why in verse 11 refer to not the Benos Yerushalayim, but the Benos Tzion. And Rashi here says that the Benos Tzion, who are the people who are really going to know and understand the great exaltedness of Israel, he says, Bonim shemetzuyonim loi b'milo u'batfilin u'batzitzis. She's addressing actually the tzaddikim. Those are the children that are marked out for him, mitzuyonim, playing on the word tzion, marked out for him through their mark of the milah, circumcision, and through their having the tefillin and the tzitzit. Those are the Benos Yerushalayim that she's really addressing. So with that, we conclude now our studies of Tanakh for today. And I'll be back in just a few minutes after a brief interval with more about the Hebrew letters, today focusing on the letter Hey. Shalom again, my dear friends. And now we come to the next section of our studies for today, continuing with our studies of the forms of the Hebrew letters as they are written in the handwritten scroll of the Sefer Torah and in the Parshiot, the portions of the Tefillin and the Mezuzah. Shalom, today the 20th day of the month of Elul of the year 5777, corresponding to the 11th of September of the year 2017. And we come today in our study of the forms of the Hebrew letters to the fifth of the letters of the alphabet, the letter Hey. The letter Hey, which we already had occasion to discuss in the previous session when we were considering the form of the Dalet, which, as we saw, is made up of two Vavs, which, if you look at the form of the Dalet, the two Vavs are the one that is perpendicular, which, as we saw, has its head facing to the right and not the left as a regular Vav, and the Vav that makes up the roof of the Dalet, which is horizontal with the feet of the Vav touching the head of the Dalet. And the same form exactly is with the letter Hey, except that there is a left leg which is in the shape of an inverted Yud, as we shall see. So following through now the laws of the form of the letter Hey from the Mishnat Sofrim of Chafetz Chaim, appended to the chapters on Tefillin, chapter 36 of Mishnah Berurah. Going now to the form of the Yud, says the Mishnat Sofrim, the letter Hey has from the outset to be written with the tag on the top left of the roof of the Hey, just a little away from the absolute left-hand edge of the top roof. This tag, as we have seen, is a tag that we have on the this letter Hey, just as we do with five other letters, the six letters being Bodak, Chayo, Bet, Dalet, Kuf, Het, Yud, Hey. So here is the Hey with its tag on it. And one of the most important parts of the laws about the shape of the Hey relates to the top right-hand side, where it is most important to have the top right-hand side squared. It should be actually like a Dalet, and this is the way that our Sofrim today write the letter Hey, with the same ekev, the same heel, which, as we said, is actually the head of the perpendicular Vav, but it's also called the heel of the Dalet, which distinguishes the letter Dalet from the Hebrew letter Reish. So the letter Hey must have, at the very least, a clear squaring of the top right corner, and the custom of the Sofrim today is indeed to actually have the ekev, the heel, protruding on the right-hand side to make sure the Hey has no resemblance to the top corner has no resemblance to that of a Reish. Now, the laws relating to the left-hand leg of the Hey, before we go on with these laws, let's mention that the Talmud notes that the bottom of the Hey is open, and the top left is also open. There's a petach, an opening. And since the letter Hey, which is one of the holy letters that makes up the name of Hashem, and indeed the letter Hey, which is both the second and the fourth letter of the name, alludes to the creation. Says the Talmud, the creation also has the bottom open so that the wicked can all too easily fall down into hell, but there is a gap between the left-hand leg of the hay and the roof of the hay, which is through which the Balei Teshuvah, those masters of repentance, are able to find their way back into the Holy Kingdom. So the gaps in the spaces between the form of the Yud and the upper Dalet are most important, and the letter, the Yud has to be written in the left-hand lower corner. It must be far enough removed from the roof, the gap between the Yud and the roof, far enough removed so that an average-sighted person could easily recognize the break between this Nekudah, the point of the Yud, and the roof of the letter in a Sefer Torah, which is placed on the reader's desk before him in the synagogue. Because if the break between the left leg and the roof was not visible, the letter could easily be read as the letter Chet, where the left-hand leg is attached to the roof. Of course, the roof of the Chet, the way we write it, made up of two Zions connected with a hump on the top, is not the same as the roof of the hay, but nevertheless, if the left-hand leg of the hay were attached to the roof, it would definitely be easily read as the letter Chet, which would make the hay puzzle invalid. If there is the slightest connection between the left-hand leg and the roof, the hay is puzzle, even if a child read it as a hay, but there was a strand of ink connecting the left-hand leg to the roof, we would not accept the child's reading. This invalidates the hay if the two are connected. On the other hand, the gap between the Nekudah, the Yud, and the roof should not be more than one breadth of the nib of the pen with which the scribe is writing, the thickness of the kulamus. Now, what would happen if the scribe, instead of placing the Yud at the left-hand side of the hay neatly under the so that the back side of the Yud pointing to the left is aligned with the extreme left of the roof. But what would happen if the scribe actually positioned the Yud underneath the roof of the Yud in the middle? And that is considered to be pasul if this were to be done. If the scribe put the point, the nekudah, under the gag of the hay, so it's in the middle and not at the left-hand side. Although that is actually considered to be a pasul, an invalidating, something that invalidates the letter, the scribe would be allowed to scrape off the surface of the parchment what he'd written in the middle and position the Yud in its proper place. In Tefillin and Mezuzah, he could do that as long as he had not gone on to write any further. If he'd already written further, he would not anymore be able to correct the letter. He would have to put away the parchment in the Gnizah. It could not be used. In a Sefer Torah, it would be it would be permissible to correct the form of the letter even if the scribe had written on. Now, if the scribe had indeed written the letter with the leg too far in underneath the roof of the hay, he would, even if he'd gone further, he'd be able to scrape off the part of the left hand of the roof that was protruding and to create the letter hay as it should be. But if he was not able to do this, because if the letter hay was in the middle of the word and he were to scrape off the left hand roof, it might look as if there were a gap between two words. If so, then b'diavad, if it was already done, if he had written the nekuda in the middle of the roof, the scroll would b'diavad, if that was the way written, would be kosher without being corrected, because there are some of our earlier sages who say that that was indeed the proper way of writing the yud, with the left hand leg actually some way under the gag, the roof, and not at its extreme edge. So continuing now with the laws of the letter Yud. The nekuda of the hay, as we've said, is like inverted Yud. Here is to the left of the hay on the screen is the Yud, its proper way up, and if we invert it, that is the form of the left-hand leg of the hay. And the laws of this inverted Yud, this nekuda, is that it should be narrow on the top and wide at the bottom, just like an inverted Yud. It should slant down to the left. It should slant down to the right and not to the left. If the Yud were slanting out to the left and not the right, the hay could easily take on the form of the letter Taf, where specifically the inverted Vav of the left-hand leg of the Taf has to be protruding outwards, and if that were the case with the hay, the letter could be misread by a child and would be invalid. The height of the overall nekuda should be at least equal to that of a yud, including its upper okets. In other words, from top to bottom of the way a yud is written here, our illustration is not quite in proportion, but that should be the height of the yud that makes up the left-hand leg of the hay. And shorter than this would not be acceptable, even if it had already been done. And the Hafetz Chaim in Mishnat Sofrim emphasized the need to alert the Sofrim to the importance of this law, that the Nekudah, they should write it, the scribes, at its proper height. If the Nekudah were drawn too small, nevertheless, if the child reads the letter as a hey, it would be permitted to the scribe to lengthen the nekuda to its proper height, even in the case of tefillin and mezuzot. If he'd gone on to write further on, he could still go back and extend the height of the nekuda. So with that, we conclude our look at the laws of the form of the letter Hey. And we'll take, again, just a brief interval of a couple of moments before we come to our studies of Chassidut of Rabbi Nachman. Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom, and back to our studies for today, going to now the teaching of the holy Rabbi Nachman of Breslev in his teaching 15, lesson 15 in the first chelek, the first part of the Likutim Moharan, continuing from where we have left off the last time, where we had learned that in order to taste the Or Haganuz, the hidden, concealed and treasured up light, it is necessary first to elevate the faculty of yirah, of fear and terror of the material, to its root in the knowledge of God, which must be knowledge in the heart. And says Rabbi Nachman, when a person attains the level of this da'at, the knowledge of God, the das will enable the person to apprehend and understand the Torah. Like it is written in book of Proverbs, chapter 8, Ani chochmo shochanti ormo. This is the Shekhinah, the holy Shekhinah, the Torah, speaking forth her words. Ani chochma, I am wisdom. Shochanti ormo, I have taken as my dwelling place ormo, subtlety, craftiness. That shechunas atoiro etzel bar das. That is to say, explains Rabbi Nachman, the dwelling of the Torah is with the bar das. The person is the master, the owner of das, divine consciousness and knowledge. K'moshe Kosuv, as it's written in Daniel, as Daniel answers Nebuchadnezzar, if he's able to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream, to tell him the dream and interpret, he says, Kuchebrichu Yohev Chochmaso l'chakimin. The Holy One, blessed be He, gives wisdom to the wise. Here, Rabbi Nachman is explaining to us, it's not that until we attain das, we will not understand or be able to study the Torah. We have to be constantly studying the Torah, but only when we elevate our gut innate fear to be awe and reverence for the exaltedness of God, only then will the horizons of wisdom be opened to us. If we will pursue wisdom, then God will open up wisdom to us. If we will pursue that, pursue the knowledge of God, then God will give us as His gift an opening in the portals of wisdom. So the acquisition of and the understanding of the Torah is an integral part of this pathway that Rabbi Nachman is mapping out for us to attain the Or Haganuz, the hidden light, that we have to ascend from da'at, from the knowledge of God, to now the indwelling of the Torah within us. But, says Rabbi Nachman, continuing, Avol yesh shnei bechinas Torah, but there's two aspects to the Torah. Yesh bechinas nigle, or bechinas nistor. There is the revealed Torah, which is the outer parable of the Torah, contained in the laws and the situations, the stories of the Torah revealed in the Torah and in the Talmud and in the tradition. Over Chinas Nistor, there is also the hidden and secret level, the esoteric level that is alluded to in all of these mashalim, all of these parables. But to the level of the nistar, the hidden and secret levels of the Torah, one cannot be worthy to attain them except in future time. We are, as we still remain trapped in our bodies in the material world, not able to receive the true interiority of the Torah until we shall arise to a higher state of being in the future, be that with the repair of the body, its rectification after Mashiach, or as we go on from millennium to millennium with the increasing perfection of the souls in the resurrected and perfected bodies. Avol bazeh ha'olam. But in this world, in this life that we have, zoicher v'chinas nistor l'alidei tefillah b'mesiras nefesh. A person is worthy to attain the aspect that is hidden in the Torah through prayer that is offered with mesiras nefesh, by submission of the soul to God, by devotion to the highest levels possible of fervor and intensity, by giving oneself over in one's prayers as a sacrifice to God. Now, to prayer, a person becomes worthy precisely through the revealed Torah. Ki ha-Torah shehi benigla hi bechinas Sinai. For the Torah that is revealed, that is called the aspect of Sinai, Mount Sinai. This we learn from a discussion of our sages in the Talmud, tractate Brachot, Daf Samach Dalet Amud Aleph, page 64 on the A side of the page. K'moshe Amru Chazal, like our sages said, Sinai ve'oker horem hai minayu arif. Sinai on the one side and Oiker Horem, one who uproots mountains, which is preferable. As we shall see in the continuation, they are saying which is better, a person that has a wide knowledge of the actual laws of the Torah, the halachot, and can provide this to all who come, or a brilliant Talmudic scholar that can analyze and break up and divide up and produce lines of reasoning going in all directions, and is uprooting the great mountains of previously stated positions through the intensity of his brilliant analysis. Which is preferable? And the Talmud says, well, Sinai is preferable. The Torah scholar that can provide you with the bread and butter of the Torah, Heshivu, the answer given there in the Talmud, Sinai Adif. The kind of Torah scholar that is called Sinai, he is preferable. As the Talmud says, that everybody that needs merchants that sell wheat, everybody's got to eat bread. The revealed Torah, everybody needs it. But the esoteric Torah, there are few that really need to know and understand the secrets of the Torah for the sake of their tikkun. But Rabbi Nachman is leading us on the journey to find out how we can indeed, even in this world, experience the secrets of the Torah. But before we go on to that, let us just go back and note what he's telling us here, that to attain wisdom and knowledge of God, it's necessary to have the Torah. There are two levels of the Torah. There's the revealed Torah of the laws, the Mishnahs, the Talmud, and of course the literal meaning of the words of the 5 books of Moses and the Tanakh. But then there is the hidden level, and he tells us that the only way for us in this world to get some apprehension of the hidden level is through prayer, but the only way to get to true prayer is through the study of the revealed Torah. So he's telling us the revealed Torah leads to prayer, to the ability to pray, and this is explained indeed in the opening teaching of Likutei Moharan, that it is the Torah that enhances the prayers of Israel. So we need the Torah to know how to pray and what to pray about, and this is Sinai. And as we will see, it is this knowledge of the revealed Torah that can bring us throughout to prayer with devotion, which will lead us to an apprehension of the hidden level of the Torah, and the revealed Torah is called Sinai, and the hidden level of Torah is something other entirely. Continues Rabbi Nachman, Bechinas Sinai ubechinas Shiflus. The very essence of Sinai, the acquisition of the Torah, depends upon the attribute of humility. And we shall discuss this in our next session, but to understand that the study of the Torah does and must engender us very deep humility, when we see the tremendous wisdom of our sages of all the ages, and the tremendous wisdom of the Torah, and our own lack of wisdom. So with this, we shall conclude this session right now and continue in our coming session. With that, my dear friends, I will bid you farewell from Jerusalem until, God willing, this coming Thursday, when I hope to be back with our teachings. So for now, shalom from Yerushalayim, and my blessings to you.